celebrating 16 years of Young Turks.
After Infosys, we want to take the learnings and apply those learnings to as many companies as possible. For that, you need a platform. And Axilor, first of all, is an institutional platform supporting early stage companies.
So in the last 2.5 years of Axilor, one thing that I keep reminding myself that Axilor is also a startup. Right. So just like any other startup, the first few years, it is just a series of experiments where we are validating our hypothesis around the different things that we set out to solve. The one thing that I can clearly say is that whatever conviction that we started out with, whatever hypothesis that we started out with when we started Axilor, I think the conviction has only become stronger.
And the conviction that the founders of Axilor, Chris Gopalakrishnan and Ganapathy Venugopal, are referring to is if one follows a process and a systematic approach to venture investing, one can bring some method to the madness of scaling up. On the show today, we're going to give you a sense of the depth of the accelerator ecosystem in the country, the gap that the accelerator and early stage venture fund Axilor is trying to plug. We also meet 3 startups from the Axilor portfolio across different sectors and different stages of growth. Pocket Aces, a digital entertainment company that runs successful online brands like FilterCopy and Gobble. IIT-Madras-based startup Detect, whose drone data solution is currently being used by some of India's largest oil and gas companies. And SurveySparrow, whose AI engine makes customer experience management for online and offline businesses easier.
India has become the 3rd largest ecosystem for startups in the world, 5th in innovation. This wave of startups, they feel that they can conquer the world, and that's quite exciting to work with them, to support them, to make it happen.
At the bottom of the pyramid, you have thousands of startups coming up, and at the top of the pyramid, you had the venture industry that had ready capital to deploy into innovative startups. But there was also a huge missing middle. Right. So if you compare with any other mature ecosystem, the middle has some 2 or 3 important components. Number one, there is enough institutional capacity that is required to support startups. And institutional capacity comes in the form of good accelerator programs. It comes in the form of enough number of mentors and advisors available for startups. The second part is the angel and the seed investment capacity. And in India, despite the number of new startups coming up, right, in thousands, my own estimate is that the angel capacity is about 1/100th of what the system needs, right?
So let's illustrate some of what VG is alluding to with numbers and data from a NASSCOM and Xenov report that was published earlier this year. And let's start with a comparison of how India stacks up against China, the US, Israel, and UK. Now, China counts for about 2,400 incubators and accelerators. The US has 1,500. India is at about 140, Israel at 130, and the UK is at about 50 or so. Just for perspective, Israel and UK are much, much smaller geographies, so by comparison, the density of accelerators is quite commendable. A fairer comparison is between the US and China, where we lag by many, many miles. Also in the US, 75% of the startups that are able to go ahead and secure Series A come out of 4 accelerator programs. So the pyramid is well built out.
So let us take US for instance, right? They've got almost 6 angel investors for every startup. You have really large global tech companies coming out of there year on year, right? So that creates a huge pool of talent. On an average, there will be at least 10 to 12 mentors that are available for every startup because there are enough number of people with experience. So while in numbers, the number of startups coming up in India is almost the same as that of the US, right? None of this other capacity exists. So what it means for anybody deciding to play in this space is that you can't really be a siloed model and hope for success, because all the other things that you need to make this success possible as a system is not available. Which is why if you see the last 3-4 years, right, pure play accelerators have not been able to scale. They've actually scaled down. If the model has to succeed in India, 2 things will have to happen. The model has to be a lot more integrated. So you have to decide to help startups, not just over 100 days, not just over 6 months, not just over 9 months, that you need to have a model that allows you to help them on an ongoing basis in the first 9 to 12 months of their journey. And the second thing is, if you decide to play in this space, you cannot just build your own model. You have to invest a lot more time in building the network, whether it is customer access, whether it is investors.
Axilor Ventures is an accelerator and seed fund set up in November 2014 with a vision to address these problems through a new venture funding model. It runs 3 programs: a 100-day accelerator program for startups in early stages of idea, a pre-seed funding program with investments up to $40,000 to $75,000 for startups with early traction, and a seed funding program with investments up to $500,000 for startups looking to scale. It currently works with startups in consumer internet, enterprise, healthcare, deep tech, and fintech. Founded by 25-year-old Madhulika Mukherjee and 23-year-old Tushar Mishra, SurveySparrow is a startup that graduated from the summer 2017 batch of the Accelerator program. SurveySparrow is a customer experience management solution for businesses to understand and act on customer opinions accurately and in real time. By having all customer opinions and feedback at one single place on SurveySparrow, businesses are able to identify gaps in their service quality, measure important business metrics, and improve upon them. But how is it different from a plethora of similar products available in the market, not just in India, but globally too?
If I, as a customer, walk into a McDonald's showroom and I go and write a review on Zomato, and whatever review that might be, that won't be pulled out by a help desk solution or a CRM solution. Now, similarly, there are multiple different customers talking on other different channels. So we aggregate all of these opinions from multiple different channels and then tell the business what a customer is talking about you. So is it positive? Is it negative? What are the aspects that you should improve? What is it that you're already doing better? This is something that you should do more. Across different locations, what are your weak points? What are your strong points? So that you can take preemptive measures to improve customer experience.
The product went into beta in September 2016, targeting clients in the hospitality industry. The venture scored its first paid client in November and in the last 8 months has grown to over 300 customers in India, Middle East and UK and is clocking a turnover of $6,000 a month. With growth on track, we asked the team why they joined Axilor.
It was very funny for businesses to take us seriously. Okay, you guys are just out of college and you will tell me how to do this. So initially when we got to Axilor, we were not that confident. Just for example, we could not pick up the phone and call a CEO of this publicly listed company and say, hey, I have this product, will you be interested? So here, talking to people from different domains, understanding the problem more deeply, helped us get that confidence. And today, with that confidence, just after graduating from the program, now we have 10 to 12 huge logos as our customers, wherein we have been able to sell to businesses, 20, 25-year-old businesses.
Every product company right now based in India often faces the fear of turning into a services company because after getting a few big Indian clients, do you think that they dilute the product in a way to Indianize their product so much that they start servicing essentially those Indian clients?
So there is no escaping of some customization when you're working with enterprise clients. Second thing is, you should not subsidize one with the other. So you can't subsidize the license revenue and give services free. You shouldn't give services free and subsidize the license revenue. Make sure that both are profitable by themselves over time.
So are you a fan of the whole ecosystem of startup mentorship where people charge you for mentoring? Or are you more of a do-it-yourself versus trial and error kind of an entrepreneur?
First of all, a good mentor will provide significant value and a good mentor will not charge for mentoring. So I say that mentoring is something you do out of your passion, your love, and your need to give something back. When I look at my own career, I have had mentors at different stages of life and different people actually. So for example, during the initial stages of Infosys, Narayan Murthy acted as a mentor because he was older, he had a lot more experience than us, and then he would act as a mentor. If you look at NASSCOM, for example, NASSCOM was created for sharing and helping each other, very openly, even though we are fierce competitors, and helped each other. So learning happened by sharing.
Learning by sharing experiences is one of the key ingredients to building a successful startup ecosystem. Moving on, another startup that Chris has been excited to invest and play mentor to coincidentally comes from his alma mater, IIT-Madras. Now, plant maintenance is one of the biggest impediments to productivity across industrial projects because it requires human intervention, which is both expensive and unsafe. So 23-year-old Daniel Raj wanted to change the game by letting drones take over. Here's the story of Detect Technologies.
For these three engineers from IIT-Madras, what started out as a hobby has now become an entry into a $10 billion market. They set up Detect Technologies, through which they offer drones to help industries improve efficiencies. These industries can range anywhere between chemical, fertilizer, nuclear, and most importantly, oil and gas sectors.
Today in the industry, you have several pipeline leakages. People have died because of it, and a lot of productivity loss is also there in these industries. Per day, they lose several crores once they have a shutdown due to a leak. The reason this happens is because there's no technology today that can monitor thickness changes in these pipelines beyond a certain temperature. So what we have come out with is some patented technology for the first sensor in the world that can monitor these pipeline thickness changes till 350 degrees Celsius. So we took it several steps forward, made it extremely low cost, made it the first IoT system out there to do this. And it's taken us about 5 years of R&D to build this together.
The next challenge was to provide a solution to large-scale plants that still follow primitive methods of inspection, by which we mean shutting down the plants for visual inspection. So Detect developed a completely automated industrial drone that can be used to inspect and assess large volume assets like crude furnaces, cables, boilers and stacks. But Detect's solution goes beyond just recording a video and handing it out to the client.
We built a lot of domain expertise into the algorithms we built to automatically interpret these assets and figure out what the corroded areas are and what the client has to do to account for it. The drone building is one aspect, the sensor integration is another aspect, and the third aspect is the consultancy part of it. So a lot of companies would have to coordinate to get this wholesome solution out there. We are trying to do it all together.
And all this is done within the same day, making Detect not just a complete but also a quick solution. Established just last year with an initial funding of 10 lakh rupees from IIT Madras Incubation Cell, Detect has already signed up clients like Reliance Industries, Bharat Petroleum and HPCL. With a target to generate revenues of over 3 crore rupees by the end of FY18, Detect wants to fly its solutions overseas to countries like Singapore, Malaysia and the UAE.
Interestingly, Detect Technologies has been incubated at IIT Madras' Incubation Center. And I would like to point out here that of the 140 incubators and accelerators we have in India presently, 100 of them are incubators, which means they help with the idea and product development and seed funding, while about 40 of them are accelerators, which, like we've seen with Axilor, provide mentorship to companies with at least a ready version of the product, helping them scale up. Now, most of these incubators are actually set up on campuses, and as many as 30 of these have been set up only in 2016 as part of a government-mandated program. As far as accelerators are concerned, most of them are independent entities like Axilor, while the rest of the pie is made up of corporate accelerators, a segment that's seen a 35% growth year on year.
There needs to be more such institutional angel networks, angels who will come and support the startups. There needs to be more formal programs. There needs to be networking of accelerators and incubators so that we can learn from each other, support each other. But I'm very optimistic about that part because that has actually grown. You know, the country today has 280 plus accelerators and incubators. I think on the late stage, we need to look at family offices, we need to look at our institutional investors earmarking a part of their funds to support the startup ecosystem.
On that note, it's time for a break, but on the other side, we continue our conversation with Chris and VG, and we also bring you the story of Pocket Aces when we return, so stay tuned.
Celebrating 16 years of Young Turks.